Okay, welcome to the Redacted Culture Cast. Once again, guest has to experience me having a conversation, sudden change of tone. But what we are here for is we're here to talk about the gun culture. And if we want to get too meta, although I'm pretty sure that the use of that term died in like 2017, maybe 18, maybe COVID killed it. Are we censored yet? But no. Today this is again where we focus on things that we believe to be right and true and good within both our lives and gun culture in Americana as we expand. So I usually have the guest introduce himself, but you're taking a drink. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
All right.
You want me to introduce myself now?
Please do.
Oh shit! All right. My name's Ben. I'm co-founder of Flux Defense, Snake Staff Systems, and another company we got coming pretty soon here. But yeah, I'm just a guy. What do you want to know?
I guess here's an interesting question to start off with. You said you're the co-founder of Flux Defense, Snake Staff Systems, and a third company along the way. And when I grew up and I thought of like gun culture and companies and as I've been growing up since, there seems to be an older mindset of like the company, right? So like, my this is not true, but like my grandfather worked for General Electric, or like, we worked for Browning or something. And now it's like, yeah, actually, like I have 3 companies and they're all really small. And I wanted to know if why didn't you just incorporate Snake Staff Systems under Flux Defense? Like you could have keep growing the brand in that way. What was the mindset in that?
There's various reasons. Probably I mean, I don't know. In terms of the largest reason, I'm not entirely sure, but first off, they're very different. They're different missions. They're in the same rough field in terms of like I guess small, compact, life-saving gear. But outside of that, they are different in that one puts holes in things, and the other one is intended to repair that hole. So I think that was part of it. Just that we wanted a separate kind of a medical, I guess, trauma gear division. So it made more sense to separate the company, as well as the other large reason would be the fact that both the products carry their own separate liabilities. The braces have their own liabilities, as well as they are gun frames or whatever, which for I guess people who don't have any idea what we're talking about, this frame is what Flux is. This is the Flux Raider. This is we focus on little PDW systems that are built around the FCU and then the slide of the P320. So like the operating system of the P320, but the thinking is that there are certain liabilities that are entailed with building weapon components, as well as braces, and then there's other liabilities that are entailed with building life-saving gear, like a tourniquet.
Okay, because I mean, I guess I was thinking about it too. Is like kind of like from a brand concept, but it also comes across pretty in one way. It's like, well, actually, I mean, you started the company with 2 different people. Like that would make sense to me, right? Like you're like, oh, you said you're a co-founder of both of these, so you're a co-founder of Flux Defense, and that's that's this side of, even though your life is more complicated than just Flux and Snake Staff. It's like this this is my project over here with this guy, and then this is my project over here with this thing, and like that. I'm seeing a lot more of that, is what I'm trying to say. It just seems like I think as like gun culture holds like a merit, so to speak, of decentralization, we have at least appear to see a lot less of like who's the guy that everyone hates on? Bill Gates, where it's like he's
yeah, okay.
He's like a monopoly on patents, and he's just like he's literally the whale that just keeps consuming things. Yeah. Whereas like you've got a project over here and you've got a project over here, and what is created with gun culture is this like spider web network of the industry where you can't take out any one node and eradicate it. You would have to burn the entire thing down, which also looks like a little bit evilish. So
it's just a form of it's just a form of I guess security in terms of you don't have one, you can't just take out one piece of the let's say Jenga tower and potentially collapse everything. This is the thinking on our end too. It's the part of the reason why we started Snake Staff. I mean, first off, I wanted to carry a tourniquet every day. I went down the deep rabbit hole of researching trauma gear and IFAKs and med kits, all of the components, and then I ended up designing my own little tiny tourniquet. It was I wanted to carry I tried carrying a cat because cat's a good old standby, and it's a great tourniquet. It's saved more lives probably than any other tourniquet out there. Not probably, absolutely. And yet it wasn't designed for carry on the person, so it's a bit large for that purpose, and you got to dedicate an entire pocket for it, or you got to roll it down your leg. Like, you can do it, it's not convenient at all. And so I was thinking, well, I could just make something for myself. This is what I do. I make shit for a living, and then I ended up I showed Arias, my business partner, and he really liked it, and he thought we should make a product out of it, and it was a great egg in a different basket. So that was another reason why we ended up doing it, is because like not only could we save a lot of lives with it and get tourniquets out there as like more of a standardized system, as a standardized thing, because so far we've had like 3 or 4 uses, and I think all but one have been chainsaw or saws of some sort, wood saws of some sort. And then one was an accident in, I think, Taiwan. And because people don't really think about this, but there's a lot of, there's a lot of danger. Like, you're more likely to be injured from anything else besides combat. And in our special bubble in America, in the first world here, there's a lot of other threats out there, and car accidents are a huge thing. So I was just thinking, I'd like, if a femoral bleed can lead to unconsciousness in 2 minutes, death in 3, I want something on my person that could stop that. And if I can make it as small as like a little G19 or a P65 mag, then I can have one on my person at all times. So anyway, part of why I was trying to bring that up is that's because it's its own separate kind of deal. That's why we separated it into a different company. We started a whole new company, and there is a little bit more difficulty. There is also part of what you were saying was, starting with different partners, maybe, which we did after we were like 98% done developing the tourniquet about a year ago. I think we ended up bringing on a third partner. There's we have a buddy of ours who I think you maybe met when you came down to our shop that one time, but he doesn't own the place, but we sublet our building from him, and he's in the adjacent office. And I was thinking, like, we needed a good, opposite personality from us, where is really hyper organized and like a really good manager for this company. We got to set it up right from the get-go, unlike Flux, where we tried to manage everything for forever, and we're not that type of person. we're creators and designers. And so I yelled over to him and I said, John, you wanna manage our company? It's the tourniquet company. And I think he was already, he was already aware of the tourniquets because I'd been working on them for a long time. And then so now we have a third partner in that. So that's another reason maybe to keep it separate. But we do have this company coming that is Arias and I currently. Maybe we'll bring on a third partner. We do need the manager for it, but the thinking there too is just separating liabilities, and then the product lines are just very different. They're all similar, like rough. The mission is the same. The mission for all of our stuff is to create the best life-saving gear, the best defensive gear. It's really kind of intended for everyone, but particularly the everyday man, like us, like you and me, just normal dudes.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when I first encountered the Raider. Like I first saw one. I don't remember exactly when, but it probably would have been like 19-ish time frame, maybe 2019. Could have been a little bit around there. Could have been 2020. Again, this is where COVID things and riots and just the haze of
though it's been a huge haze for the last few years.
Oh, for sure. And so there's definitely that, but that's not really the point. It's just the thing about it though is it definitely is unique. It's one of those things you see it and you go, that's not like most anything else that I've seen. Given it's not the first time we've seen a pistol with a brace or a pistol with a stock that can come out of it or whatever, or not come out of, be attached or something of that sort.
Yeah.
But it's because there were revolvers 200 years ago or 150 years ago that had little screw-on wooden stocks and stuff like that. But still, I found it. The idea of it is that it's I think the first thing that you can say about the Raider is that if you're comparing it to something like an MP5, you're missing the point, because it's not that they're different use cases particularly. It's just a different thing. It's
yeah.
I mean, sure, there's something a little cyberpunk about it. There's something a little there's something a little covert about it. It's a little bit less of a you have to build a briefcase for it to fit in, but it does make and so for the people who listen to the show, I'm pretty sure most of our audience is going to be at least somewhat familiar with the Raider. I'm looking forward to seeing it represented more in video games, and then this as American gun culture continues to expand. I think that things like the brace ruling is going to backfire pretty aggressively, and that's going to open up an entirely new field of R&D that. Think about it this way. When the brace was first approved basically 10 years ago, that basically skyrocketed the production quality of what were then referred to as short barrel rifles, because everyone could make one now. You're like, oh, wow, I don't have to just make 16 and 18-inch barrels. And now that they've proliferated so much, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets used in argument against the ATF, saying, okay, so you want to tell me that the braces are illegal, but look at the entire periphery of materials that have entered the market that you're basically going to make moot. And a more nefarious attitude would say that was the point from the beginning. But then it also produced things like your brace, the Raider. There's a stock version, there's a brace version. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
I travel a fairly decent amount, and so in a sense, the Raider would be the perfect tool for most of my travel.
That's a massive intended purpose for it,
except for maybe Montana, because they're either good old boys or a mile away.
Yeah. Sorry, dude. My business partner keeps calling me. I'm just asking him what's up. Telling him I'm on the podcast. I think he forgot, but so.
Well, that's why you get the third guy to do the organizing, sending memos.
Well, dude, that's been a massive fucking help. There we go. Oh, never mind. Just missed call. Yeah, but that's been a massive help, is having him, because now on Snake Staff, we don't have, in terms of the launch, we were, I mean, that's all I was doing for a while, but having him now it's just dev, which is that's what I like to do, just development. So working on improvement, but
so then could you like elaborate on that, like a little bit, on combining two concepts? One of them would be like how did the Raider come to pass, and then the other one is like, as a developer, how do you even look at it? You know what I mean? Like you took you as a person created a product, and then you as a person create products. Like how would you recommend somebody interested in product? Like I'm not the only person in this industry who's like, oh, this would be a cool idea.
yeah.
But then I look at how to implement it, whether it's manufacturing and whatever, and you can quickly get lost in the daunting nature of it. Like,
yeah.
How did that go?
Where do I start? So, yeah, I mean, there's a million places I could start. I would say, I don't know. I think I always kind of wanted to do stuff like this. I mean, I think in second grade, maybe kindergarten. I was making. I don't know what I was doing really, but I was making products. And maybe that's kindergarten, and then in fifth grade, I started like my first like more real companies. My attempt was to make it real company with this Big Knives Co. and it's the shittiest knives you could ever buy. I didn't know anything about it at that point, so I was putting the cart before the horse. I then did a lot of work after doing that, and I was obsessed with all sorts of weapons, but particularly blades, and forging and all that, for a long time. And then, so I don't know. I think part of it is maybe a little bit ingrained, and I've always liked making things, creating things. So part of that's probably a little bit ingrained, but in terms of the process, I mean, you got to start somewhere. I also think that, valuable partners who maybe know shit is helpful, because we didn't know anything, and it took us, I think Artist and I were working together in this basement, in my basement, for like 4 years or so prior to launching Flux, on different concepts. Although from the get-go, it was always some sort of like PDW style system that I guess, I don't know. I downloaded a CAD program, and I just saw a huge vacancy in terms of the last 100. Like you say, there have been a lot of say stock pistols. Braces weren't really a thing. People were pretty set in their ways in terms of how to shoot. People are opening up now, because I mean, I don't know if you know who Demonstrated Concepts are. He'd actually be a great guy to have on the podcast. Rhett Newmeyer is his name, but he's the guy who he's extremely good with he's developed various ways of shooting different guns, but particularly shockwave pistol. Shockwave firearm, like the bird's head grip, little short 14-inch barreled shotgun. I mean, it's not legally a shotgun, but it's a shotgun. So he developed that, as well as the cheek pistol. There's other ways of doing things that I'm sure we're gonna discover more in the future. But I just saw this huge vacancy in terms of, okay, you have a tiny pistol, or even a decent sized pistol, and then you have a massive change in size to a long gun, particularly a 16-inch non SBR. It's just, and then you talk about running a suppressor, and the difference just becomes bigger and bigger, and unwieldiness. So I think a huge part of it was running drills, especially in cars and around barriers, just realizing like, okay, yeah, sure, we can come up into you can manipulate the gun and maneuver through whatever shit you need to. However, coming around a corner with your muzzle downrange, and especially pointed at the most likely spot you're going to need to shoot, that's absolutely, definitively, objectively better than having to bring your gun out and then get it on start target. Even if you practice all the time and you can snap on target crazy fast, it's never going to be as fast as already like just barely having to manipulate your muzzle an inch or so and then fire. So I just thought that there was a huge vacancy, probably mostly because the NFA, as well as people are unfortunately talking about culture. The gun culture is intrinsically tied to conservatism, which conservatism is by definition, I mean, it's conservative and less open to new ideas. Now, what that means is that people, I mean, it's your typical FUD where it's like, I'm not saying anything about politically conservatives or whatever, just saying that this is the way my granddaddy did it, 2 world wars, like stuff like this is just how we do it. So I think between those two reasons, I saw this huge vacancy and I was like, I think the best little close quarters weapon is going to be little. It's going to be small and compact, and I can fit through doorways without having to manipulate my gun through like in weird, awkward ways. I want to just always have it pointed towards the threat. And in vehicles as well really helps. So, and then other ways too, I just saw other ways that it could be better and improved. I think that's part of it as well. I can see how everything and everyone can be better. And I don't understand why that's a bad perspective, especially when you compare it with the appreciative, being grateful to like, okay, and understanding that things are already great, but we can improve them further.
Yeah.
So,
well, like one thing to think about, or not one thing to think, one thing about it that like a kind of a distinct shift that I've noticed is that when we're talking about the Raider, we're talking about a firearm that is distinct from the P320. But you're not reinventing the wheel in the sense of it's still a tilting barrel. Is that the gunsmiths are going to hate me in the line, but it's like it's still a tilting barrel delayed action on a single on a single plane slide. Okay, so this is moving back and forth, and so you've built basically a different platform around it that takes advantage of the combination of legal developments with like the fire control group, the FCG, and then so like that's maybe not necessarily a legal development, but it's still something new. Like, and so you're taking this concept where, say, I have a P320, I can take that, pull the parts off, and put it on another gun, and still, and you're on your frame that, and which effectively turns it into something that is both the same and different.
Yeah,
I remember a teacher who actually I didn't enjoy and get along with at all, but he said one thing that was, I think, stuck with me, and that was like a lot of creation is taking two things that you don't expect to go together and making them fit.
Yeah.
And so I mean that's especially in like creative writing. But like when it comes to conservatism too, it's like this isn't really to be an argument in the defense of conservatism. It's just interesting how we've defined it, because for the longest time I've seen what you refer to as conservatism is like an anchor being dragged in the sand. Like it's still moving. It's just moving slow.
Sure.
Which is weird because like then your sole function is like a handbrake, like that you're supposed to gauge how tight you pull or not pull. And that's such a betrayal of like, honestly, I would say that like that is what being a FUD and being like a conservative of that mindset is more definitive than their aesthetics. Is that like you don't actually believe in anything. You've just abdicated the responsibility of thought to being whatever isn't now, because now makes me uncomfortable. It's like, okay,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
And I think we've seen a pretty aggressive shift in what you would consider like the Republican Party, but like this isn't a show about politics. You've seen the same thing in gun culture, though, is that like culture moves gradually then suddenly, which is, you know, a bit of like it's a gradually then suddenly, and it moves, and then boom, it just changes. And that might be something like, you know, gun culture didn't change for a long time, and then boom, the NFA comes around. That was not a good change. And now everyone's trying to take everything. And then it's like, oh, the hubbub. And then we get like 30 years of peace.
Yep.
And then Reagan, you're like, oh, well, you know. And then, okay, now we've had another 30 years of relative peace. And now it's like, yeah, this brace dealing is sort of the next major thing. And it's taken 10 years to build. But you know, maybe now gun culture and conservatism, or whatever that is not simply just going to be an anchor being dragged in the stand, but instead of that, pay attention to what it believes and focus on that a little bit more.
I completely agree, and I wasn't trying to throw shade on conservative. I mean, I'm not a conservative myself. I'm probably the closest. Libertarian would be the closest, even though like that doesn't mean I agree with every libertarian or every libertarian, whatever. But
welcome to political homelessness. You're exactly. Welcome, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's like that. The fucking truth is, Jordan Peterson talks about this, but both sides are needed. Honestly, I mean, as much as I get angry at what the radical left has done to everything in our country, and in which I don't know if we need that necessarily, but you need both sides of the coin. You need, because no one thought process will lead us to the perfect truth, and we need to and it's also I've thought this for many years, but it should be obvious. It should be obvious, like whether you're conservative or progressive or whatever the hell, it should be obvious that we're doing some things right. We definitely have arrived at doing, like, this is the best way to do things, or this is a very good way to do things. And the opposite is also true. We could absolutely continue to improve. We could do things better. We could do certain things better. Both of those things are absolutely true. So I don't really think that one side or the other has it completely right. I have very much liked the shift in conservatism, and I feel like, I mean, in terms, if you look at freedom lovers versus not, I mean, like, that's no longer the left, at least the general left, at least the extreme left, that's not that side anymore. And the right is, it's funny when you have like this, I don't know, insane like flip, where the tyranny is coming, like, absolutely the people we need to worry about are on the left, in terms of those who would take our freedoms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the easy answer of that is just like, look at the heroes, right? It's like there's nothing about, look at the heroes of different cultural institutions, and like you can make some. There's a lot of criticism to be thrown everywhere, but I'm not really interested in entertaining too much of a. I'm not. How do I say this? It's really hard for me to take anybody seriously who isn't willing to stare the face of the raw authoritarianism that the left has been arguing for I don't know, at least the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Yep.
I get it. It's like, you know, you had the claims this is one of those things where, like, it's just hard to take somebody seriously. It really is. When you're like, you can't tell me that that it's about like women's rights or something like that. That's such a joke, dude.
But women are oppressed. Women are
you know, like, but like you can't say that with a straight face and not explain to the world that you're basically an NPC. And it just sounds so. But the problem is that it gets all bottled up and vitriolic, and then you just want to, like, you know, pull your hair out. Or a good example of this is like. And I think we're really starting to see the cultural shift on this one. But I was talking to a guy I know earlier today who legitimately lost his business because of medical lockdowns. And by now, it's been a year and a half, 2 years later, and the response that the government in his area has said is, okay, we were basically wrong about everything, but act like it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Like,
there's
now
no sorry.
But no. It's like, we were wrong about everything, but like, your taxes are due, and it's like,
Yeah.
you can like, you almost get to the point where in our cultural concept, it's like, I can understand why people get all black-pilled and angry. But it's not the solution. It's absolutely not the solution. And so because then you just give over to the god of nihilism and die in depravity and wretchedness and stuff like that. So like, as far as like a political conversation, it is interesting to see that the cultural poles have switched. Like, if you vote blue for the rest of the millennial time, you are an authoritarian, you are a bad guy. Like, there's no explanation for it, because at this point in time, unless the names and faces start changing, it's like, it's restriction on people's ability to move, restrictions on people's ability to vote, restrictions on people's ability to talk and converse. And it's like, the receipts are out there, dude. Stop. If we want to talk about grievances and grievances done, the biggest advice that I would recommend for anybody who considers themselves or their family members to be anywhere like on the left-leaning spectrum is just say sorry. just admit that, like, hey, you know what, we were wrong about this, and like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry for being a total dick.
Oh man.
You know what I mean? Like, and recognize that not everyone's going to forgive you, but like, maybe they should. Still, that would be my one recommendation: is you need to stop approaching every conversation as if you were somehow like God and Moses going, I dictate reality. Like, no, denying the science wasn't a thing. No, it was never about women's choices to vote or rights or whatever. No, it's not about these kind of things. And just stop approaching the table with like, we don't want to take your guns. You're a liar. You're a liar. There's no longer a value in distinguishing between whether or not you're ignorant or malicious. If you say that, you're a liar and you're no longer at the table. Zero conversation. Yeah. And so that's where I'm at with it. And my rant is over. I'm sorry.
Well, I agree with everything you just said, man. It's a frustrating position because, and then they wouldn't. Lots of times they don't even want to talk, but that's half the problem. I feel like with the current situation is that they don't want to talk. My mom's this way. I love her, but holy shit, man! Like, she doesn't want to talk about it, and yet, like, the funny thing is, I remember, like, what was it? March, probably March, maybe February. Might have been February of 2020. I was telling my mom that, hey, there's a new virus we don't know anything about. China, we should be careful. Just be prepared. Like, just maybe start to think about, how to prepare, like, for some unknown pandemic that you don't know anything about. And I never used them, but I put rubber gloves I had a bandana and rubber gloves. And then we ended up having an earthquake here, which was crazy because we haven't had an earthquake my whole life, 33 years. We've never had an earthquake. Wow. That got everyone else here a little bit crazier. But so anyway, I remember telling her these things, and then she works in the medical. She works at the University of Utah hospital, and like for like one of the main doctors in administration. And she was telling me how it wasn't a big deal. She's telling me all this shit where it's like, it's not a big deal at all. And then a month later or whatever, when Fauci comes out with this, whenever, like, and then all of a sudden, because Fauci was saying the same thing, it was not a big deal. It was not a big deal at first. When no one had any fucking clue what this virus was, they were saying we had no idea. And like, sorry, they were saying we had no idea, but it's not a big deal. And then all of a sudden, once we start to find out, like, oh, okay, it's really not that big of a deal, they flip their tune, and it's a world ending. It's a, it kills more people than what? Like,
Yeah.
With what?
Well, I
Because
mean, that's such a it's such a distinct example of like, okay, it's not like it's not like we need to burn down all the institutions, right?
no.
Like, no one is saying that. Like, I mean, I guess people are saying that, but like, that's not the issue that's at hand. Like, there are issues at hand with like maybe we've learned that the mechanism of the institution is got some flaws, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that there are certain elements that need to be added to the Bill of Rights, like there under no circumstances are any government agencies allowed to require certain things, or like another one might be something like advocating for the removal of firearms from the population disqualifies a person for running for office. Like there, you know what I mean? Like something like that. Like I mean, there are changes, but like another one might be, a sense of like a new digital Magna Carta or a digital constitution. Like there are, and these are things like in the immediacy, it feels really like tense, but in the long term, like we see things kind of change, and there'll be, hopefully we can, continue to think about what we believe in regards to like privacy and stuff, and also institute that into our technology and to our equipment and our gear and our culture and our legal system, both hardware and software. Dang.
Sorry, that's my gate. I rent from my brother, and it's
He's loud.
It's loud. But
I get the last thing I wanted to go to that point though was like the whole Anthony Fauci thing right now. Is like I think day after day we find out more. He had his fingers in more and more things, and probably just got caught doing a war crime. Like, and we have
absolutely. I mean, there's so much. Like I've been talking about him I've been extremely pissed off at him since early 2020, because I mean he was saying don't wear. He was saying you should Americans should not wear a mask. Really early on, where at the point where it was literally the opposite. We didn't know anything about the virus, and wearing a mask was the intelligent choice. At that point, when he was telling us to not wear masks, it was more intelligent to be safer, because nobody fucking knew a goddamn thing about the virus at that point. And yet, then he flips it around, and then so I'm like, okay, and then he admits to lying. Oh, and then you find out that what was he? Let's see, he paid. So in like early January, there was the British researcher who studied the virus and found out, like, okay, it was made in a lab, like almost for sure. Early January 2020, right after it came out, and what did Fauci do? So he talking to Fauci. There was all these internal emails that we got because of FOIA requests, and like late calls and everything. So unfortunately, we don't have access to the calls, but the emails are enough where it's like, okay. And then Fauci instructed him to reverse his conclusion and say that it wasn't lab created or leaked from a lab. And that guy got $15 million.
There's extremely
Fauci
high.
got hundreds of $1 million, because he's like, how is there no conflicts of interest? How is there no, like, yeah, I would love to see Fauci at least in jail for the rest of his life, if not more than that, because he made a lot of people suffer. He is absolutely a piece of shit dictator.
Yeah. Well, so I think this is where this kind of lines up too, because like, you look at the gun industry, right? There's a lot of capability from the citizen level to the corporation level to the veterans, and there's a lot of capability. And I'm not like, I don't mean this to be, oh no, let's go straight into it. There is an immense amount of capability within gun culture, and one thing that we notice is that the people who seem to be the most capable are the most tend to be the most precise in their application, right? And so specifically let's just use specifically in the application of violence, is that like the people who are really good at it are not necessarily the people who take the boiled down kind of, I think it's a little bit garbage, adage of like the best, how do you win a fight every time you run away? It's like, no, that's dishonorable. Okay.
Not every time.
The right answer is wisdom is knowing when to run away and when to fight, when to and wisdom requires a moral element to it. It's not just knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so the wisdom is the combination of your developed moral compass with your intellectual prowess to be able to discern a situation to be, we fight today or we don't fight today. This is a courage statement. This is a strategy statement. Sometimes those have to get married. And so that's gun culture. Like gun culture, when you look at the American population, is the most capable of any form of violence, and they are the least violent of, well, not the least.
Yeah. Well, I would say least violent in terms of unnecessary or unethical or immoral or whatever, bad violence, whatever you want to say, because the people who think that all violence is bad, it's like, okay, so what do you do when
it's a little reductionary?
It's like this, you live in a special bubble that is not representative of the real world, and you have never experienced any sort of hardship, or you just and you somehow think that no evil goes on because
I will make a contrary point, or you have and you willingly accept the consequences of it. There is a difference between the guy who says, I'm a pacifist, who will call the cops. You're not a pacifist. You're just
calling dudes with guns. You're passing off the responsibility.
You're not a pacifist. If you call the cops, you're not a pacifist. You're not. You just quite frankly aren't, because you are exporting your individual responsibility to your own whatever, and you're saying it's somebody else's responsibility, and that responsibility is paid by your tax dollars, and so you're just lying. Whereas somebody who says, in the event that I am assailed, I will not call the cops, and I know that it may result in my death, and I know that it may result, but I choose not to participate in violence, that person can claim to be a strong pacifist or a real pacifist. But those two are not the same.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, sure. There is the convenience of it. And you could even go back to like Nietzsche and say that most people aren't moral. They're just cowards. Sure. That criticism is useful, but it's also cold comfort. But yeah, so I get it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of not controversy. I think that's neat. I think even looking at like the issue that we have with like the whole Dr. Fauci thing is on the one hand, it's that he's wrong, or worse, that he's lying. And then the other is the raw authoritarianism that comes from it. Of like, I declare, therefore, like, bro, this isn't feudal country.
I am the science.
Yeah, I am that. Like, okay, that's like we in cultures of yore, people who said things like that were burned for doing bad things. You know what I mean? Like they were like burned on or they were like ruled out. Like, you can't do that. And so I don't want to get like, again, this has been I know it's a hot topic of the day, and I know it's sort of a subject, but I'm trying to like mold it into like gun culture and how gun culture moves and how we look at it. It's like, well, we're not really in support of this authoritarian thing, right? Like
the opposite. And that's the beauty, in my opinion, that's the beauty of the gun culture, and that's the beauty of this place where we find ourselves, where like not all of us agree on everything. I would say, probably more so than most things, but I don't know if I've ever met anyone in the gun culture, really. I mean, I'm sure they exist, there's different pockets, but I've never met anyone who supports any sort of authoritarianism. In my opinion, that's because that's like 90% of the point of a gun, is the fact that you can't tell me what to do in terms of, overriding my freedoms, whether it's the, say, the lone bully authoritarian that wants to mug you or rape you or rape your lady, do whatever the freedoms they're trying to encroach upon, and whether it's lone authoritarian, or if it's authoritarian over the government, like Fauci, like whoever got Biden elected, whoever it
Yeah,
is, like it doesn't matter.
because he didn't have a campaign. Let's admit it. Like he never left his basement for like 6
No,
months. So they're like, oh,
it's never been more obvious that at least the current president is a puppet. It's never been this obvious when you have a dude constantly stumbling on his words worse than I do, and just this, like, saying the most ridiculous fucking shit nonstop, constantly, over and over, and then same with this fucking vice president. I don't get it. Like, it's, and the people, man, I say the same things that you were saying about with COVID and everything else. I would say, yeah, I mean, they're supporting, like, okay, sure, fuck Trump, sure, whatever. If you don't like him, no worries. You don't have to like him, but you're saying anything but. So handing off the reins, the power, the keys of the kingdom to who? It's not Biden. It's not Kamala. I don't know who it is. I don't know what type of people. All I know is, if we look at the past few years, those people have no interest in America and the American people. Their interests do not align with ours. They are not they're not good people. It's certain, whatever it is. Yeah, we're absolutely.
It has this attitude of like being a colonizer, right? So like you know, I know we've referred to it in like culture in the past. You know, like we've referred to it in culture in the past. And you said you're 33. I am about to turn 33 here. And so, you know, my birthday's coming up, and the term, like, I remember in college, and I remember about the time I went to college, that the word colonizer was kind of like the hip thing for certain people to say.
Yeah.
Is you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, bro, you're illiterate. Why are you using words that you don't understand? And like, and it's just, and this goes back into these binaries, right? And I'm not talking about, you know, like sexual binaries. I'm talking about things like well, it's just, again, it's like it's not hyper reductionary.
Yeah, it is.
You're reducing everything. It's like, well, it's there's a term, like a term that gets brought up quite frequently, or used. It's sort of a tool in the toolbox of philosophy, is looking at something and understanding whether or not it's a false distinction. And like, a false distinction would be, it's either A or B, and the answer is like, no, there's actually more options here, you know. And so that would be a false distinction. Like, it is in formal logic, you would write it out in something formula that it is either A or B, but it is not possible for it to be A and B, kind of thing. So it's actually, it's not A and B. It is not possible for there to be A and B, however, A or B. And it's a certain way of writing it so that you make an absolutely accurate statement of, you know, a thing is either this way or it is this way, but it can't be both at the same time. And so that would be, on one level, it's one of the basic laws of logic, which is the law of non-contradiction. Something cannot be true and not true at the same time, but it's not quite that specific. I'm sorry, it's not that foundational. It's a one layer above it, because it's requiring, you know, there's an identity of preposition A, and then identity of preposition B, and that you're making a statement that they can't be mutually true at the same time, but one has to be true at any given time or within the frame of the conversation. And so a dichotomy is exactly that. It is either here, it is either this or this. You get one choice. And and calling it a false dichotomy is like, yeah, but they can either both be true at the same time, or they can both be false at the same time. And so that's exactly what we're dealing with in a lot of these binaries of, like, you know, of language, in the sense of like colonization, is first of all, your statement isn't distinct enough to be distinguished from literally any other guttural nonsense of a, you know, whatever. It doesn't mean anything valuable. It's just a word you're saying. And then the second one is, you know, this idea of like colonialization is, it's mighty ironic that the people who've been complaining about colonization for the last, I don't know, 10 years are basically undergoing the colonization of institutions in this country. Like anything, and instead of using the good old fashioned method of boats and boats and resources, you're using markets and intellectual blackmail that isn't even real.
Yeah.
So
censorship as well. You're using
censorship.
a lot of just different tools. It's different. It's a different. It's a different form, but it's absolutely that's interesting. I haven't thought about that. But that's
Well, I mean, it's just it's anything that I want his mind to pillage, as long as I call it racist. Like that's the simplest form of colonization. It's if I call it barbaric, then I get then I get to colonize it. Then it is if it's it's I think and so that's how it's being used, is like in a metaphorical sense. You have the same people who are accusing what a race of people of using this language of what's it called, the savage, right? Which like, okay, and then but what you're doing is you're revealing more about yourself, is that you're jealous that they would say, oh, that person's a savage, we need to colonize them, as opposed to anything that you're doing, which is, I want that, I call it something, then I get power over it. And that is essentially the modern colonization. We'll take over your corporations, we'll take over your education system, we'll take over your manufacturing lines, we'll take over your shipping lines, we'll take over your military, we'll take over your government, and we will colonize your very nation through ideological insurgency.
Yeah.
There we go. 2021, 2022. Yeah. And so that's just where that's kind of where I'm summary of thought in this regard. And I don't want to
awesome. And I haven't I have thought about the takeover, but I haven't thought about it in those terms. It's pretty ironic. I mean, it's all of this fucking social justice word, all that shit is so ironic, where it's like, okay, you're saying I'm racist because I'm white, or I'm X because I'm male, or whatever. It's like, okay, how are you not? How are you not?
I mean, like,
being what you're arguing against right now. Like when you're judging me on my skin color, my gender, whatever, how I look. Like, are you kidding me? That's the opposite. It's the opposite of what we want, and that's the opposite of what you say you want. I don't know.
I mean, let me guess. You put milk in the bowl before you put cereal, right? Like, yeah.
Me?
That's...
Oh, no. Yeah.
It's like,
totally, man. Fuck.
Yeah, that's you were the kid, and you're like, oh well, I put milk in the bowl before I put cereal. Like, are you healthy?
Yeah.
The answer is you put the cereal in the bowl and then you put milk on the cereal. That's how it works. Who cares if it's basically like cornmeal and sugar?
Yeah.
I don't need the roof of my mouth. Captain Crunch is great.
I don't mean to shift, but you did ask me, and I feel like I feel terrible. I did better in terms of answering this question on primary and secondary, but you were asking how, like, I think something to the degree of, and correct me please, of something like, what's the process of bringing a product or an idea to becoming a product or whatever. And I'm so ADHD that I don't know where I went off, but if you want, I'm happy to like answer that.
Well, let's do that then. Let's do that. Let's do a hard segue into like, what is your process for like going from idea inception to like, have you developed a process, or even better after that, how did you develop the process that you use?
Just doing it. The funny thing is, I did not study anything. I mean, I didn't go to school. I didn't study anything that I do for a living. So I'm not formally educated. I'm just educated by doing. I was at Haley Strategic, and we were having I don't know. Travis was showing me all sorts of like their development process, their stuff, and everything. He showed me this awesome, which I should have taken a picture of. I should have taken notes on. He showed me basically the development process, and it was exactly the way that we operate, even though I had no idea that's the way it's supposed to be done or that's the way it is, but I'll try and remember it roughly. But so I'll go over this, like the process in terms of the steps, I guess, and then maybe elaborate. But you have your idea, you have your idea, and the first step really is testing that idea, which means a proof of concept. That should be your first step is well, sorry. You know, you have your idea, then you have a rough design for that proof of concept, but you bring that proof of concept, which means that could be like one of our first proof of concept for like one of our PDW systems was the shittiest 2 slabs of aluminum with just all bolted together with a Glock in the middle, like just this, it was terrible. And then just testing that out. Ugly, it could be ugly as could be, but some sort of way to test your idea, and that's the proof of concept. You've proved the idea, and then you want to get to a prototype. So once you get the prototype, then you want to test that prototype, and then you go on to the next iteration, and you go in a loop until that prototype is worthy of becoming a product, being a product. Once that's the case, which really this should be ingrained from the very beginning, but the problem is if you're not educated in manufacturing, or if you haven't done manufacturing, it can be hard to start there. So you should be doing this from the beginning. We didn't do this from the beginning because we didn't really know. I mean, I tried, and I had way more understanding than Arias, my business partner. But at the same time, like I didn't know shit. So once you have your prototype, then you move on to developing it for manufacturing and like getting it a pre-production prototype or a pre-production sample where it's as close as you can get. This is a pre-production sample of the RaiderX, where it's almost there, but it's not quite. There's a few little tweaks we had to do to the mold to finish it out. But it's something you can continue testing, and then dial in for the final product. But so it's roughly take your idea, make it into a prototype, evaluate that prototype, and then redesign or tweak your prototype, make a new prototype, evaluate, and you just keep on going around the circle until you've worked out all the kinks. And you do have to balance to a degree of when you stop the development process, because you could keep going, like nothing is perfect. It's helpful to have a partner on that degree, like Arias is helpful with stopping my sorry, got a little tiger. But because for me it's really hard. It's hard to know when to stop. I think it's
I don't know this is the first time we've had an invasion by a foreign species, but yeah, whatever.
It's she's saying it's time to eat. But so it's hard. I'm a perfectionist, and I want to continue and continue and continue. So it'll get down to where it's like, okay, if we tweak this by even like a 1/10 of a millimeter, then it'd be slightly better in this regard, even though it's like you get diminishing returns, I guess. So you do have to call it when there's just the right amount of development, if that makes any sense. And you can continue improving with further version. That's what that's what the RaiderX is. It's not a complete redesign because we didn't need a complete redesign. The Raider has turned out to be a very, very good system. It has come out on top in every single evaluation of different when a unit, say like a soft unit, is evaluating for implementing into their group and or maybe replacing one of their current systems. It's come out on top in every single evaluation that I'm aware of, including against the MP7, the TP9, as well as other B&T products. I haven't seen it tested against the MP5, but so I didn't need a complete redesign. So with this new version, we're just taking all the feedback, everything we've noticed ourselves, everything that people have reported to us, what be it civilians or professionals, and just trying to improve it in every single way we could. And we could do more there just because we had more time. But once you get your design kind of dialed in, then it's time to then you have to develop the manufacturing for it, and that's its own process. So I definitely recommend. I think it's an awesome adventure. I recommend it to anyone who wants to go on an awesome adventure and is ready to dedicate a large portion of their life, if not maybe their entire life. It's been my entire life.
Would you have any advice for people, for regardless of how long they've been a part of gun culture? This is a commentary that has kind of come up a bit lately in my own thought, being there's certain people who, by job title, are you kind of know where they belong within gun culture, right? So this guy's a Navy SEAL. Everyone knows who he is, right? Not whether that he was, but he currently is, and he has his point, or this guy is a manufacturer for this company, or these kind of things, right? But then there are other people who are, I guess, one of the things that I find very intriguing is when you see people go from, wouldn't it be cool if box A, point A, to B, figuring out how to do it. Mm-hmm. So, because if I could produce anything that I had an idea for, lickety split, then maybe I'd have money, but I need money to get there. It's this particular problem, and your browser lost connection to your camera. Maybe it'll come back in a second. Do you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
It'll come back in a second, or I'll just have to kick it in the teeth. It's annoying, but keep going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What do you have advice for people who are I have an idea, how do I get started? Because that could start sewing in my kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Or or the manufacturing process just seems daunting. So how many products never come to completion because nobody finishes the manufacturing product? Or
there's so to that point, part of developing this stuff, it doesn't have to be, but especially if you want to do something that people have never done before, say for us, the auto deploy brace or stock system, which to my knowledge we're the first to do something like that, especially the way we did it. And if you want to do something that hasn't been done before, then you really should look into patents as well. And if you look at patents, you will find a shitload of patents, tons of patents on things that were, like you say, the ideas never came to fruition. They never became products. And even some did become products, but you never heard of them because they never got off the ground. Because there's so much more involved than besides that. That's that's one reason Flux hasn't ever been in the best position. We are in the best position now than we've ever been. We're finally getting our feet under us in terms of production. But there's just so many other aspects to creating a product. I would say in terms of where to start, if it's very simple, maybe you can do it on your own. But I do think that there is massive value in getting a good partner. I couldn't have done anything without Arias. I couldn't have done any of this stuff. Not only does he design stuff with me, but he's super intelligent in terms of all sorts of different stuff and planning, and then even just as a sounding board, like we build, whether it's products and or plans, we build on each other, and it's I don't know. I would recommend, like, one of your steps would be finding a good, whether it's, you know, one of your good buddies. You do have to be careful because you're going to be in stressful situations and you do not want to ruin a relationship. But that's, you know, ours was my best friend. So and I don't know, it just kind of happened. Like I was showing him my first drawings on CAD, which were abysmal, terrible, but it gave him, you know, some idea to build on that. And then I build on his idea, and then I mean, it snowballed from there. And here we are where we have all sorts of stuff. You know, we have way more stuff coming than we have currently out that will absolutely change the industry. But so I would say get a good partner, and then just start somewhere. Find any little thread you could pull on, whether it's sketching, whether it's, you know, downloading a CAD program and started to draw, which is what I was doing, as well as you know, just start making stuff as much as you can. Get to somewhere where you can test your idea, I think would be a big thing. That now, you know, there are some things where you don't have to, you know, the raw concept is good. There might be something out there, like, you know, the raw concept is good. You still want to test it to a degree in terms of if you don't need to test the, you know, the base concept is good, you want to test, like, okay, well, go to how would you make it, or how would you market it. You can just start anywhere. I would say start anywhere would be the first thing, but then just start making a plan and figuring out, like, what you would need to do. I mean, you gotta design it. You gotta design your product, and then you gotta get prototypes made. So figure out how to do that, and then figure out how to which 3D printing. So the modern day, currently, it's never been easier to start your own company. It's never been easier to create your own products ever. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So just I would say figure out how to get prototypes. 3D printing is like the easiest. I bought mine for $1,000, and then, or $750 or whatever it was. It was a Prusa from Czechoslovakia or whatever, Czech Republic, and assembled it, built it myself over like 20. It was crazy intensive. But I guess, yeah, be prepared. This is absolutely, like, I don't know. There's a clip of Elon Musk in an interview where he talks about, like, he talks about how his, you know, these companies are like, it's like a child of yours, and he gets like all teary eyed, and it's because it's true. Like, if you, unless, I mean, if you don't care about it enough, like, it's just not going to get off the ground. You have to be prepared to absolutely dedicate and maybe even risk, you know, like, for us, we started Flux on 30 grand. I sold off the majority of my gun collection. I raised funds in any way I could to start paying for that's like nothing. I mean, that's because we started with 3D printing and laser cutting and not having any tooling for it. Because, like, in molds, I mean, the Raider mold, like, just for the frame, you know, it's over 100 grand just for that one mold. And there's a bunch of them, and this is our now third mold for the Raider, I think. I guess, yeah, you gotta be prepared for you know, to risk a lot, and that means taking the time to making sure it's like it's either a super good gamble, or, and what I used to say is, like, it wasn't a gamble. It was not a gamble at all. I knew I had something good because I tested it enough. that, and then run the numbers in terms of what it would cost, what we could sell it for, and then be like, okay, well, I know I could sell, and then what your market size is. If you have all those, and you're taking you always also a huge tip, I guess, would be to guess super high on your costs, get super low on your like potential sales or whatever, like your positive number, like your the numbers that can hurt you, like the bad numbers or whatever, guess really high, and the numbers like you're like the good numbers, like you're like, well, I could sell it for this and I could sell this many or whatever, those should be way low. Just be as like not pessimistic, but like as realistic as you can in terms of like what would happen with a say a failure or whatever, which would be like, how many would you have to sell or whatever to break even or whatever, and for it not to be like a complete waste of time and or like make you homeless or something. So there's probably, I guess there's a million different tips and pointers I could give. It's hard to like dumb it down into like one little thing. It's I think that's the problem, is like there's so much. But I would say get a good partner, do it smart, like just think about it nonstop, think about it all the time. If you're not dreaming about it, then it's probably something you should maybe pass on to someone else. And then maybe license. You could. That's, I think, more people. And if you look at inventors, most inventors don't do it themselves. Like most people don't do this shit. Most inventors will just license their shit. They'll design something roughly, a concept, patent it, and then they can license to someone. So
yeah, no, I can see that. I've known people who were inventors who didn't do the development themselves. I'm thinking about this, and the way that you're saying is like, okay, cool. Did you have a mentor?
Hi. Yes, no, like they wouldn't say they were mentors, and they weren't like super close for a lot of things, but I had a not uncle of mine, like kind of like an uncle, but not really. And I mean,
I have one. I know the story.
not super close, because he lived out of state and everything, but he tried. He's an inventor. I don't know if he's gotten stuff off the ground yet. He should have had. He's been super unlucky. He's been screwed over. But he printed I think he printed like the first prototype of our brace system, and maybe our mag carrier. Not the mags, just the brace system. He definitely was like, so we only had like a few interactions, but at the same time, it was huge help. And then the other guy I would say would be probably Mike Papas of Dead Air, who founded Silence Co as well. He's given us a few tips and like pointers. I don't know if he would admit to being like a mentor or whatever, because it's more of like us absorbing. It's him like donating some time to us and just giving us his honest opinion, and then us absorbing that. But I mean, he probably saved us, because originally we started with the mag carrier attachable to the Glock rather than the brace system, because it was just me. It was the mag, the mag carrier is a way simpler design. Just has to attach to the Glock and then carry a magazine, really, which is mechanically much easier to design than a new auto deploy brace system that has never been done before. And because these are my first design, like, I mean, I've done other designs, I guess, but like my first product, like that I'm actually going to bring to market. I was very nervous about designing the brace system, because I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like I wasn't a formally educated engineer. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know. It just made me nervous as shit. So we started with the mag carrier, and he was the only person in the gun industry we showed it to. We went to SHOT I don't remember what it was, 2018 or whatever. It was a year or more than a year before we launched Flux, I think. And we'd shown, we had these little stupid cards. In fact, I think I have one here. Oh man, this is hilarious. Hardly anyone has ever seen it before. If I can find one, should be. Yeah, here we go. I forgot. My wife asked me to sign this for her, so I did because I thought it was fucking hilarious. But I don't know if you can see this very well. So we went to shot. You can see it. Look at that, redacted right there. All my hands are all backwards. And then it says declassified summer 2018 Flux Defense Inc. Okay, so maybe it was like 2 years prior. I don't remember what it was, but we went to shot, and then here's the back side or the front side or whatever. And here's another redacted. This is like our first marketing or first anything we ever did. You can't see it. Like it's like, okay, looks kind of cool, I guess, but like you can't see anything. Like what's the product? We went around and shot looking for manufacturers and then maybe, you know, basically it was investors, manufacturers. We're like, okay, look, we've got this really cool thing. I promise it's going to be really cool. It's I promise it's cool. It was a terrible situation to be in. And
yeah, but you did it. I'm just saying you just did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we just did. So that's, I would say, do it. Start anywhere. Start somewhere would be the biggest thing. We went, and Mike Pappas was the only one who listened to us. Was the only guy who gave us like really the time of day. And he agreed to meet with us. You know, we were close enough. In terms like I don't know. He lives like maybe 40 minutes out, and we stopped by Dead Air. We showed it to him, and then because that was just the mag carrier at that point, and he I can't remember exactly what we said. I don't know if we even showed him the brace, but he told us enough. He told us enough to the point where like, okay, I remember Arias pulled over on the side of the road, or maybe he told me to pull over. Whoever was driving, we pulled over. And he's like, okay, we need a massive shift in terms of direction. And the mag carrier just doesn't make really a whole lot of sense without the rest of the system, without the brace portion of it. And so, you know, then we shifted to doing the spring-loaded brace system to start with that first, and then we added the mag carrier later on, which was absolutely the correct idea. So did we have mentors? You know, kind of, not really. I would say like yes, no. Not like a real mentor that's like there and available for you to ask questions to and that. We'd probably be in a lot better position had we had that, especially if you had a mentor that was experienced in terms of bringing something to market. Like that would be extremely valuable, and someone you could ask questions to. You know, that would be incredibly valuable, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, no, as you're talking about this and you're going through, like, as I get to be a little bit bookish, and I've brought this book up a number of times, but it is Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Nassim Taleb, and he's talking about like how inventions really do not come out of a lab; they come from people tinkering.
Yeah,
you know, so it's not like, you know, it's not. There are things that are born in labs, but we don't talk about them. But you know. Sure, I know there's some sentiment there buried in that one, but no, the point being with that one is just like, it's neat because I actually am saying this from my own perspective too. Like there are ideas that I have that I want to figure out how to bring to market, and like I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing, and sometimes that's great, and we're making one step at a time. So like this isn't like me pitching to you, hey, will you be my mentor? It's more like, you know, I also have had mentors in my life. And I think one of the elements of being a mentor are that you find from somebody who is you're counting as a mentor is that you value their time, right? So it's not like So one of the guys who I consider my mentor in regards to philosophy is not somebody who I call every Thursday and be like, "Hey, bud, how's it going?" It's rather like, I need to have this question answered, and I don't know how to do it. And then I'll think about the question until I can distill it into a short enough phrase to be respectful of his time.
Yeah.
And then I'll reach out and I'll be like, "Hey, can you give me some advice on this?" And we're like, when I go visit him, I visit him about twice a year now. And it's always like, that day, the calendar is gone, but that is all what it is. It's like, so while I'm there, I'm able to be, and it's like, I wish I could be that focused every other day of my life, but I can't.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about this, and like, I want to see, what do I want to see out of this conversation? I want somebody listening to it to go, you know what, I have an idea. And by one element, which I'm not capable of providing because I'm kind of in my own sauce, I'm lost in my own sauce, be able to go like, okay, so I have the one thing I need to get one step further. And maybe that's a push. Maybe that's I should ask this guy. Maybe that's okay, I need to research patents. Maybe that's, so like, it just, because the one thing that I don't want gun culture to become is essentially, a circle jerk of complaints. It's like, it's very easy for us to look out into the world, especially us in the West, and get very, very depressed.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, there's a lot of shitty things going on, but okay, I can encourage you by saying you're going to do fine, but that's not really fruitful. What I can say is like, the hunger needs to come back, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Because even as we're talking about this, it's like, okay, now I'm thinking about a project that I wanted to get started on, and that I have been leaving in the garage for 6 months because it's so much of a chore to get to, and then hey, maybe I'll dust it off and get started this week.
Do it. I would say that action, like you're saying, there is a lot of things to complain about. Validly, there's a lot of. I could go on and on, just even about the gun industry. I could, it's a large portion of why I've done things differently is because I have a lot of complaints. But the thing is, in my opinion, is it's action. Like that's the difference. There's a difference between recognizing something that's wrong, that could change, and not doing anything about it, and then actually taking action and doing something. So I think that the biggest thing that people, like, if you want something, get it, do it, make it happen. Now, not knowing how is not an excuse, because you don't know how to do anything until you've done it. And yeah, sure, or you've studied about it. Okay, you can study it. You're still not going to know exactly how to do it until you do it. So I would just say, if you really want something, work for it, work towards it. And because I'm not special in any regard other than maybe, being a little retarded. I am definitely ADHD. I do think slightly differently than most people. I think maybe I maybe overthink things a little bit. But I'm not smart. I don't have any special advantages. I think that anyone can do these things that I've done. So I just think that I guess I am lucky with my business partner. I'm certainly lucky there. However, it's all self-funded. It's all self-funded. I think I'm also happy to give advice if people want to reach out. I mean, I don't know, my DMs are. I don't know. I guess I'm super backed up on message and stuff, but still, like, if you reach out, I'll do what I can and give advice. And for you personally too, I mean, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to sign an NDA if you want, and give you whatever advice I can, and or connect you with people, whatever I can do to help. I definitely think that people, if you want to create something, like, and if you really want it, do it. because it's an awesome adventure. Just have to realize it costs a lot.
Yeah, well, it has been, it is definitely the case of like, it is easier to complain about the corruption in the industry. Let's just use that as an example. It's easier. It is easier to complain about the corruption in the industry than to do the long, emotional, hard work. I don't mean it like I mean like it's hard work to go. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yep.
You're staring at the wall, and it's just. I get it. It's okay. Like I don't mean to be. It's not. I don't know. That's going to come across too much as like just a petty criticism, but like it's difficult. I was talking with Peter Johnson of Archway Defense about this, and he's one of those people who occasionally he's like again one of those people who occasionally I reach out in a mentor format. Like this is a mentor question. And so I need this question answered, and you're the best person to answer it. And it's Peter John. I was saying about like this. It was kind of a day where it's like I can't see, and we talked about it, and there's more to it, but it's like I do think it's hard work to build, and that's fine. And then, but you can do it.
Yes,
that's the point. Like there may not be a clear path forward, but like look at all of the video games that you play. If you know the entire route when you start, it's a lot less enjoyable.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of like. But I wanted to ask you one more question about the development process, because you started hitting off at something, and then I was like, oh, I need to ask this question. Sure. And that part is like so you got your idea, and then you get your proof of concept, and then you get your prototype, and then you work on altering that prototype or making any adjustments needed to have the manufacturing process work. And I can understand this of like, okay, and I can understand this a little bit in thinking about it in sort of a mathematical sense. Okay, in order for my product to fit within the market, it needs to fit within this price range, or I need to be able to sell this many. And the current manufacturing process can't achieve that. Like imagine CNCing the Raider out of aluminum.
Yeah.
10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like a Raider lower would probably have been $1.5 grand right there, right? Which just doesn't. But now you get new options because there are new manufacturing processes coming out. Yep. And like HRF Concepts is doing something really cool with how they're doing additive manufacturing. Villain Weapon Systems is doing something really cool with how they're doing additive manufacturing.
Yep. And
they're figuring out new ways. And that's the tinkering process of it. You might see this project rise and fall, and you might see 10 companies all try, and then a couple of them will succeed. And you might see a guy who produces 10 ships and 3 of them work, or you might see, the enduring process of it all. But how do you go from when you're working on a product, how do you combat like this idea of let's just say that the process of getting the manufacturing line is going to take 8 months to complete. That means figuring out where it's going to be made, who's going to do the making, where it's going to get shipped, when it's going to get finished, or whatever product you make. Let's just say you're making a t-shirt, right? Where's the fabric coming from? Where's it getting sewn together? Where's it getting printed, right? And the process of figuring that out is I'm sorry. If we said we had all the things that we knew exactly what material, exactly where it's going to make it, and exactly or whatever, that process is going to take 8 months before they're ready to start producing. Okay. So that means you're working on your prototyping phase. Do you use something to like, I could imagine, do you use something to keep the anticipation in check? Because I could imagine being like, this would be really cool if it would be really cool if, this happens. And then you get done to the prototyping process and you're like, okay, cool. We got to figure out manufacturing. And the answer is no. And you're like, oh, I just spent a year on something.
No, no, it can't be manufactured. What do you mean?
I mean, I'm saying like because you said you had this issue of if it was up to you, you would never leave the prototyping phase because you'd be constantly making improvements and constantly making improvements. But because you have, you know, your business partner who goes, okay, it's time to figure this out. Like, and I can imagine, you know, that there's that issue, and then there's the anticipation of the manufacturing process,
Okay.
you know, and like. And so when how do you combat the problem of like manufacturing delay and like getting worn out and like, okay, so we've reached the point of we've got a product, a proof of concept, we know it works, but we can't figure out how to get it made, and so you start getting bogged down, and then you get distracted, and then it never gets done, and it sits on a shelf. Like, how do you combat that, or do you just let that be the natural process of that which can't make it will die on its own?
Well, I don't know. I think the nice thing of having done this for many years now and different processes, I think I'm at the point now where, I mean, now the how is it made is like my first thought. That's my first thought on any project ever, whether it's mine, whether it's someone who's coming to me for some help. How it's made is like the very first question. It's well, I would say the why of the product should be number one. You know, because products looking for a problem to solve are not ideal. You know, you want to find a problem, meaning like well, I want the controllability of a rifle and combine that with the handiness, the concealability of a handgun, and that's the Raider. So you want to find the why, but usually for me, I mean, that's pretty easy to see. That's already, it's kind of a given if you're already working on something. So the how is what comes next. And when I say how are you gonna make it? That's like the first thing. Is it gonna be, like you say, additive that is so additive manufacturing, meaning, you know, 3D printing is additive manufacturing is what, it's like the nice way of saying it. And or 3D printing is often understood to be a form of 3D printing, which is called FDM. That's basically you are extruding out, you're pushing through molten plastic in a line upon line upon line upon line, and then layer upon layer. So that's what people think of 3D printing, and you see a bunch of lines in it. When you mention these different companies, Villain and
HRF.
HRF, thank you. HRF Concepts. So they're using MJF, which is multi-jet fusion. That is for polymers. It's the best. That's one of the. I would recommend people research that, as well as probably utilize that in your first products. MJF is an amazing technology, and that's what we did. I think we might have been the first in the industry to use MJF with our original products. That's how we started on such a low budget of 30 grand. And I mean, you could start with less than that, with like less, you know, smaller, less complex products. You could start with way less than that. So I'm not sure about Villain really, but I know HRF uses the same manufacturer that we didn't start with, but we went with because he is absolutely the best, and awesome and amazing dude, like awesome, both awesome friend and awesome to work with. If I could, we'd make jokes about cloning him all the time because there's no one better. His name's Robert of Nico Labs. Nico is the company. And you can tell him Ben sent you from Flux. But they will also, like a lot of stuff, they'll actually design. You can give them the concept or a rough drawing, whatever, and they'll take it. He'll finish the design out. He's done that with a lot of different stuff. not our stuff, but he does. I know he's done that with a lot of other stuff, that's a huge. Like he can take. I would say like that's one of the best places. It's not for everything, you know. There's going to be a lot of stuff like soft goods, or luckily he's into machining now too, so he can do machining. But he can take your idea and make it a product faster and easier and better than most anywhere else. That would be probably the greatest for a lot of people. That's going to be like the greatest value from this concept. He's also very reasonable in price, and you know, really great in quality. And in terms of general business relationship, by far the best. This dude was he was at Saddam Hussein's trial. He was at he's on, I think, a team. He's in Blackwater with Travis Haley. Super awesome dude.
And he will never have time now. He will never ever. You know, there's a small chance that I know who he is.
Yeah, he's awesome. We were arm wrestling at shot the last day of, I think it was the last day of shot. Yeah, last day of shot. We entered. He took us to some nice ass, like the nicest restaurant I've ever been, and Wagyu. It was the first time I ever had Wagyu. I've grown up poor. I'm still poor. I'm gonna change that this year finally. But like nicest restaurant ever. And then I think, I don't know if you know Brad of Tactical Dev. You should have him on too. He's a cool dude. But anyways, Brad's like, you should arm wrestle. And this dude is like 220 something pounds, huge arms, and then he's trying to get us to arm wrestle, and instantly Rob's like, he clears the table. This super like dress code like restaurant. I wasn't dressed up or anything, but like dress code like enforced or whatever restaurant. And then like, you start fucking arm wrestling, and it was amazing. So he's awesome in every sense of the way, every sense of the term. I would recommend. Sorry, the whole point was MJF and additive manufacturing. It's that form of 3D printing is doing layer upon layer upon layer rather than line by line. So the speed is way greater. It comes out with parts that look like production parts. A lot of people thought our original stuff was molded because it looked so good. It performed the mechanical properties are very good as well. We were the largest user of that technology according to HP. HP is the creator of the technology. When Flux, I don't know, a few months after Flux launched or whenever that was, I don't remember when it was, but for a while, because that came out like when we were in early development is when that technology was released to the public. And you do have to be very careful with there's ways to mess it up. We had early batches that we had to recall and completely replace from other manufacturers, not Nico, that would you could break it. I mean, sorry, you could drop it and shatter. Mm-hmm. Whereas like we done all of our testing on these initial parts. That's another thing. Don't just test your prototypes. Don't just test your pre-production samples, but test your production runs as well, because we dropped with loaded mat. We did drop test after drop test after drop test, but then all of a sudden we got a batch that was just terrible because this new form of manufacturing, this is the downside of new forms of manufacturing, is that it's not tuned or dialed in exactly. Not everyone knows that, like, okay, well, if the humidity level or whatever little thing, mm-hmm. you could get stuff all fucked up. But I don't remember where or why I went off on that tangent. But
no, it's really useful stuff, dude. Like this is the one part that I kind of feel bad for, is that like it's the exact kind of stuff that I need to hear is probably the best way of saying it. And I know I'm not the only one in this one. And like, so I don't want to just kind of blow a bunch of hot air up your skirt and say that, but like, this is kind of these are the weird, hard conversations to have that are, like a little focused on like, yeah, but like how and why, and like, that it helps because it's little pieces of the puzzle that add up over time.
Yeah,
I know. Although he's referring to conflict and challenges between people, Tim Pool would reference like grains of sand make a heap, and it's like, You know what? I'll say this from the philosopher's side. I have read about the same concept 10 times from 10 different authors, and it wasn't until I got to the 10th one that made it work. But then in retrospect, I can look back and go, that's where this got figured out, and that's where this got figured out, and that's where this got, and now, but I don't get, oftentimes I don't get to see it till it's done.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
don't. And so like,
Yeah.
you know, and that is the objective of this show is in many ways to be like, hey, look, the gun culture can be stratified and measured and turned into a 4-quadrant political compass, and it can be, and you can figure all this kind of stuff up, but like we're talking across lines here, trying to figure out how to distill that into a spoken language over time. That's just how it works, because you know what, maybe you figured out some, maybe you're able to present something that got somebody listening to this show to go, all right, I figured one thing out, and then he produces a product that maybe isn't industry changing, but it becomes a part of something, and it becomes a part of something.
Yeah.
And as a result, like we started earlier, this whole system of gun culture is so anti-fragile because of those kind of pieces. And I do appreciate that our era of gun culture is a lot less guarded with our company secrets, because you know it's a company secret. Like like people will make jokes about how there's like the secret recipe to Coke. I'm pretty sure you can Google it at this time, and if not, no one cares, because Coca-Cola makes it. They're a monopoly.
Yeah.
As far as on Coke, but there's other examples of what that would look like. I'm like, I mean, the easiest example would be like, you know, you are the perfect example of the Flux Raider, in that, like, you know, you've made something, but now there's more to go on to. I kind of want to readdress on how you thought about the development process for something like the Raider was different than your tourniquets.
The Flux spray. Oh, the tourniquets.
The tourniquets.
Yeah. So what's the question exactly?
Well, like, okay, so like, what was how was the development process for those different? How'd you figure that out?
I mean, I would say there were my process for almost everything probably is very much the same.
I mean, that is an answer to the question.
Yeah, the only difference would be that I'd learned more. We had an incredible time with the Raider, like incredibly difficult time producing the Raider, and that, you know, this has 47 parts to it. It's got feature after feature after feature, and a lot of stuff that had never been done before, such as the speed load system that drops both magazines at once. Which, you know, we had done before, but I redesigned the system so it's different than it had ever been done before. There's just the complexity and the difficulty in producing that was a massive shift with the tourniquet. I wanted to make it as simple as possible, because it's a one-time use. Like, you know, the Raider is designed to outlive you. The Raider is designed to last forever. I want this, you know, to be passed down to your fucking great grandchildren. Whereas a tourniquet is a little bit unique, because it has to be, it's a one-time, you know, it has to be good enough, durable enough, etc., reliable, like all of the things that are also similar to the Raider, where it has to work every time, but it's a one-time use item, meaning it has to be very inexpensive, which means simple. And so I tried to keep everything as simple as possible and as easy to produce. So that was a huge that was I guess probably the only real difference in terms of the Raider. I mean, I was trying to do that with the Raider to a degree. This is my first molded design, which was ridiculous. But Arias and I had never ever designed anything for to be molded, and we started with this frame, which was ridiculous. Like, I don't recommend that. I recommend starting simple. Take, like, you actually just suggested, or you said something. You know, maybe your idea isn't absolutely industry changing, revolutionary, and it doesn't need to be. I don't think, I don't think you have to start there, and I think you would probably be better off if you don't start there. And if you look at Magpul, what is a Magpul? It's something that people don't even like. If you're starting in the industry in the last 5 years, you probably don't even know what that is, because it's been made irrelevant. Like they named their company off of this little simple product that now, so I guess for people who don't know, maybe I should say, but it goes on the end of your PMag, has a little pull tab, basically a little rubber thing that you can pull your mag out of your mag carrier or whatever. Which
it's a loop. It's a rubber bandy.
Exactly.
It's a rubber bandy loop thing that goes in the bottom of an aluminum magazine, so that when you got to pull it out, you can throw your finger through that loop, and then because guys like me, or guys like in my time and before Magpul really blew up, or right around the time that they were, you'd get issued your GI mags, and there'd be a couple lines of tape around the bottom with a piece of 550 cord pulled, dangling through it, so that if you need to get your mag, you put your finger in that and pull it out, which also was 550 cord, so it had all the other problems of like twisting and getting constrained. So they just made this fat rubber band. It's kind of it's an underwear shaped rubber band that goes on the bottom of your gun.
It's exactly what it is, and it also does protect your mags a little bit when they're dropping on the ground. So there's a secondary benefit. But then again, no one uses them anymore. It had a place, and it was extremely simple, super simple. One little piece of rubber. I think it was an ideal place to start. It was an awesome, great thing. And look what they've become and built themselves into the, the supplier for, magazines for most systems, in terms of like the major magazine supplier. They make all sorts of awesome stuff, incredible stuff. That has been revolutionary and changed the industry, and yet that's not where they started. So I don't think you need to start there. I should actually, just while I'm thinking about this, this stock right here is printed via I don't know why my thing, maybe it's because of my lighting. I guess my outside lights went off. But so this is printed with MJF. I don't know what you can see and what you can't. This part, and this part, and then
I promise you, it doesn't look as cool on the screen as it does in person. But I guess I do have to ask: is this the first time that anyone has seen a public version of the RaiderX?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. I posted a picture of it on the private Flux Facebook group, which we don't run. I don't run. I help. I answer questions whenever people have on there, but it's not official. Somebody started it and I joined up. But
did you have to ask for permission to join a page based on a fan page about a thing that you produced?
Mr.
Admin, I need proof of identification. That like, who's this?
I think the dude
Ben guy.
I don't know. I don't know, but I think he might have known who I was. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have laughed really, really hard if they're like, they denied you because they're like, this is a private group, and I'm like, bro, I own the company.
So. There have been funny moments now and then again when I'm commenting on someone's post or whatever, and then someone responds. And I love when people have no idea who I am. It's great. It's awesome because it's like when they're like, well, actually, the Raider does this or that. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, sometimes
I stand corrected.
To her and just like, oh, yeah. I was like, all right.
That's okay.
But yeah, it's probably the first time. It is definitely the first time it's been on camera. Outside of the one picture, just like picture a part of it. But most of these things too haven't been on camera. These maybe in the background, but that's the very top is the F-17 first prototype, which is funny because we actually started closer to the Raider. It has a pick rail on it, on the top, and then the different evolutions. Now there's like 20 missing versions that are not there, but there's like a little bit of an evolution from the original prototype, and then the MP-17, which is in Battlefield 2042, and then the silver. That's the first Raider. The the second version of the MP17. This is the first Raider prototype we ever had with that silver. This is the first time we ever tested mag release, like the dual mag release. So actually, we just got, I think we're getting the patent right now for that. We just got granted or whatever. But
congratulations.
Thanks, man. And then next versions, and then from there, yeah, there's a bunch even missing down now to this. But and this isn't even still the final form. Actually, I got the new frames today, so hopefully we're almost there with the RaiderX. I don't know, it's probably a month or two out, but
all right, Gogeta. Isn't that the guy's name? Sorry, I just made a stupid comment.
You're good. But
this isn't even my final form. Goku.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yes,
yeah.
for the people who grew up in our time, I did actually end up missing Dragon Ball Z. So
I did too. I ended up catching up on sometime, I don't remember when, but I caught up with a little bit. Like I understand what it is now, and
it's not that I didn't watch any anime as a kid. It's just that's the one that I didn't see.
Yeah. All right. But yeah,
I was a little bit more of a Gundam Wing guy.
Gundam Wing, man. I had one of those.
Yeah, you know, like extremely melancholy main character, fantastic. You know, no complex political drama, terrible things.
Yeah.
I do have one more question before we kind of roll up for the day, but if you had something else,
I do have one more tip or whatever, one more like massive learning thing. I'll go after you if you want to ask the question first.
You should go first because I have my question written down.
Okay, so the last thing I would say is that learn about if you want to do this, you know, if you want to produce products or whatever, learn about, you know, tolerancing, learn about the biggest lesson for me was that you can making one thing is really cool. Like whatever your idea is, making one is actually really easy, super easy. Even if it's super complex and super difficult, like, you know, this is somewhat difficult and complex. Even then, like that is massively easy compared to making thousands of them and making them easy to produce. Like that is the real trick to making products, is how to produce them. So think about, you know, just like nothing. The downside to printing parts, or say laser cutting, these parts used to be laser cut, these steel parts. The downside is that there's variance between production runs and even part to part. Nothing's ever the same. It's not ever going to be exactly the same dimensions. And so what that means is you have to account for all that. You have to find out what your variability is and then design that into your system. So if you have interacting parts, that's why, like, say, you know, 1911s used to be hand fit and everything because they had very tight tolerances. And so that means that a lot of stuff had to be hand fit together because not every part would work with every other part. Whereas on a Glock, they designed the Glock, other stuff as well, but the Glock is like the perfect example of designed for manufacturing, and you just have everything dialed so that every part works with every other part every time. And that is a huge deal. So the more you can do that, the better your system will be. And just also realizing that, you know, when you're drawing something in CAD or whatever in your design, not everything is going to be exactly the way you design it every time, like you draw it. So like these rails, you know, they can warp and heat treat or whatever. They're never perfectly straight. So that adds friction to the system, to the brace, to the ejection system. And so mostly, I would say like half the time these have to be custom tuned by one of my guys to make sure it works every single time. So I would say just remember that not every part is always going to be the same every time. That, you know, problems are going to happen, and you need to account for the part variability. Really pay attention and think about that. I don't know. That's if I would have understood that from the get-go, we'd be in a massively different spot. So there is a lot of value on that. Final note on that. There's a lot of value in tooling up and paying, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, like for the Raider, hundreds of thousands of dollars for expensive tools that will produce, not only will they produce the parts cheaper and quicker, but they will produce more consistent parts that will be dimensionally more similar and closer to exactly what you want more repeatedly. So anyway, now you can hit me with the question. That was a massive thing I thought of, and I was like, that's a huge thing for me.
Yeah. Well, then how does somebody learn about that? Is that like is that, you know what I mean? Do you just do it? I guess.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I learned it by doing, but I'm
okay.
sure there's probably classes out there. I would look at places like Masterclass. There's a few things that I've been meaning to check out myself because I would love to further my education. But I would research.
Like, it's not an easy question.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. Okay, it's a reasonable resource. Is it like engineering books? I guess.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Additive manufacturing 101. This is a printer. Okay, cool. Well, good, because I mean that is a useful thing. I'm thinking about even with my own ideas of like, oh, you know, that's an interesting point. I didn't think about the variability between things because it really isn't print and repeat.
No.
So I want to close on this question, and I got one more question for you, which is a little bit more of a personal question, and that is, if you were to encounter somebody who, let's rule out all of the obvious detractors, like this is a liar, he's not honest, this metaphorical person is asking for advice on this question, and it doesn't have to be, oh, Ben, the great manufacturing god of the flux machine. Rather, it's more like, what kind of advice would you give for that? It's the same kind of advice that I'm thinking about if someone were to come to me and be like, I'm thinking about joining the military, what would you do? It's like, these are things that this is what I know. I absolutely know that you have to be able to be okay with some sense of authority. That it's not always going to make sense. If you're thinking about joining the military and you're the kind of person who cannot trust anybody, you're not going to make it. If you have zero capability of trusting, you're not going to make it. That's a very simple answer. If you're unwilling to do the work to stay in physical shape, you're not going to make it. But those are pretty straightforward answers. Then there are other ones. The question I have for you is, in the event that somebody's interested, or not only interested, but they've gone through some of the starting positions of, like, they've prototyped things in their home. They've gotten their design kind of drawn out, whether it's a complicated pencil drawing or they've figured out CAD and they started designing their object their own. But the thing that's preventing them from making the next step is that they're concerned about releasing something into the market and having it get stolen. And because of the majority of the stories that they've heard about is, oh, I actually created X, but they stole it from me, or this idea is just a knockoff of that idea, or this product is just you know what I mean? Like, and they're concerned that they know they can see the merits of their design, but their concern is that the moment they bring it to market, big company, Globo Corp is going to come in. They're going to send their horde of lawyers to scrape it off your platform and recreate a new version of it, and then you're going to be destitute, and you're going to be the guy who invented the thing who was ruined by corporate America. And so while there is a concern for that, what's your advice for somebody who is now the thing that they're challenged with is essentially overcoming the internal hurdle of like sharing that thing? Like, how would you recommend what would you recommend from like a character in a person's story?
Well, first I would say it is a valid concern to a degree. I definitely think that we were personally we were over concerned with that. We didn't tell anybody except for people who are extremely close to us about anything. We have relaxed a bit on that, for better or for worse. The advantage in sharing it with more people is that you will get more feedback and potentially, ideally more testers. The more people testing your product, the better. It's absolutely, in terms, except for the risk. There is higher risk, obviously. I would also say that we often we're actually going for the opposite now, but we started with a lot of manufacturers that were not in the industry, and with the and as well as investors, intentionally, because then they would not see they would not be positioned to see the value, if that makes sense, of some of our stuff. And I would say that one, get NDAs in place. NDAs, unfortunately, with a large corporation. Sorry, unfortunately, with a large corporation, you know, an NDA is really only as valuable as and same with patents. A lot of this stuff, it's only as valuable as the money you have to back that contract or whatever. So,
who's the real guest here?
She's full of love right now. I think she's 8 and she's going crazy. But I would try, I guess, as an overarching point of advice, be as realistic as possible and realize that for someone to steal your idea, they have to recognize the value, and most people are not going to recognize the value of your idea as much as you typically. And then only really share it when you have to share it would be one, and then you don't have to be as worried. And get an NDA in place with potential manufacturers. Just download like a template of mutual NDA, and then get that. There we go. Get that put your company name on there or whatever, and then just most places are going to be fine with it. They're just going to ask before we share any technical information or data or designs or idea, just sign this NDA, and then you're covered to a degree.
Because I think the internet has enough bad actors that you have to say things like, this is not legal advice, and it's really that's not who we are. So if you're trying to take legal advice, right, this is probably not what this is not what we're here. I'm not marketing you legal advice, right? But so it's redundant, but rather, even in that sense of okay, an NDA oftentimes comes across as laborious and artificial. But what you're saying is that it might be worth doing the work because that forces you to think about all the other things.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, I do appreciate that point. I really do. I don't like things not coming to fruition because people are concerned. If gun culture is such that the truth of it will destroy it, then it will have to die. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. If the character of everyone, the moral fiber of the gun culture is so frayed and fraught and torn that we cannot trust each other, then it's not going to survive. And this is a lost cause, but I don't believe we're at that case. So
I totally agree. I also would say in as concerned as we were, and we have had all of our products that have had time to be copied and stolen or whatever, all of them have been ripped off. Even when we have patents in place. We have had that happen, but it's also been it's only been after we've proven there's a market. So that's one thing. A lot of these people didn't really see whether or not they even saw the value. They didn't. These copies haven't come until we've blown up and everything. So at that point, you're more poised. We weren't as poised to capture the market because our production went down. But if you do things correctly and you have production, I would say it's not a huge risk if some Chinese company Ike Industries or something like that comes up with a wannabe system or whatever, a wannabe copy of your device or of your system. It's not going to matter as much if you already established yourself and if you've already if you've done it right and you have a good product that should be superior to the copy.
Yeah, it is such a contemporary problem of modern manufacturing. But I think the way that you get to economically stifle a population, and it's not necessarily a form of warfare, but like to me, the weapon that I see wielded is demoralization, and that's really just the way of it. Like it's demoralization. If you can break the heart of a population, then they will do whatever you want. And if you in one of those ways is by destroying their, if you can destroy not just their economy but their belief in the potentiality of an economy, which just sounds really fruity, but I mean, like, if you can reduce a person's mindset from it's difficult to why should I try, then you will dishearten an economy, a population, and they will chase after escapism. And it's a really human problem, but like, it is what it is. Like, there was no, I don't know how to say this anymore, there was no tribunal for many of the characters that we read in books, and it just is what it is. But there's this disheartening approach this dark cloud that looms over our culture and our country, and it's just so palpable, and some of its effects are things, like, why should I go to school? It's just a bunch of, whatever you want to call it, or why should I, like, I'll never be able to achieve anything because of my race, or whatever your mentality is, like. And so in gun culture, it is oftentimes like, oh, I'm not, we've seen it in the past of like, I think a method of disheartening the population would be to say, you're not a Navy SEAL, so you can't own a gun because you're not a human being. You're a child. You'll never do anything great. You'll never accomplish anything. Go sit in your cave and complain. And it's like, I think that's a method of disheartening populations. It's effective and it's a strategy, but it is gross. So
I completely agree. I also think that I don't know. I hate when people say stuff like that, because I think it's kind of the opposite of my mentality. I think that you're only limited by your own self. Like that's your true limits are those that you set for yourself. And if you don't limit yourself, you're capable of anything. Whoever you are, you can do anything you want if you want it bad enough. If you want
limits, the limits that you place on yourself somehow are the only ones you don't push back against.
Mm-hmm.
I can never try. So then you never do. Whereas like, it's kind of the same thing in like ranger selection or ranger school. Mm-hmm. Like if you tell the biggest reason why the biggest reason why people fail ranger school, and I believe it's a failure, is because they quit. And what they've told themselves is, I can't do that. And so they don't even try. And you're like, all right, you don't have it.
Yeah.
So be it. But alrighty. So, you're with Flux Defense. You are part of Flux Defense. You are part of Snake Staff Systems. I think, is there anything you'd like, anywhere you would like people to go? Anything that's coming up that you want people to look for? Coming up, what's the news? What's the new hotness on the Flux front?
Yeah, I mean, the RaiderX coming. The Raiders in general will be more available, both the standard Raider and the RaiderX. And then we'll have more upgrades. Holsters are incoming. I've designed a bunch of custom like comps for the Raider. I'll continue fleshing out the system. We want to perfect it. The P65 version will be really awesome. It will be very different, but at the same time, same rough concept of the smallest concealable package. That one will be more designed specifically for concealing on your person, especially with the suppressor. So that'll be dope. And then we'll have a Raider for the 10mm P320, which will be really awesome. So that's for Flux. We have an IFAC coming, EDC IFAC coming for Snake Staff Systems. This is like prototype or whatever. We were just at NAR for the last, that's where it goes. This mug, they gave me this, because they're going to be producing it. for snake staff. So it's just, the smallest we've consulted with the experts to and done shitloads of research in terms of like what it's a hard item to design, because you only want the very bare essentials, because otherwise you're not going to be carrying it on your person. So
it is, yeah. Like you were saying earlier with the tourniquet, like the biggest challenge that people had with carrying a tourniquet is it was so cumbersome.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't mean like it's heavy like a backpack. I mean, it's like
just big. It's just bulky, So that's for snake staff, as well as we're working to roll improving changes. Improve it with rolling changes, and I'm working on a Gen 2, but I mean that's quite a ways out, because we'll have to redo all the testing on that, so that's going to be a long time. And it doesn't, it works great. It's just that everything can be improved, and I don't know. We have the opposite perspective as Glock. It's Glock thinks their shit's perfect and that their shit doesn't stink. Whereas like, okay, it's very reliable, great job, you've done very good, but there's a reason why a million other companies have taken over different market shares, because okay, well, there's a lot of stuff that can be improved. So then we have our new company coming, which I don't think I can say.
Let's keep that for another time, because I don't want to crack that door and then feel like I regret.
Yeah, thanks. I can't say anything on it, but I will say we do have things that will change absolutely the optics game forever on rifles, and
we will use that as a trailer then for the next time.
Yeah,
I'd love to have you on again for sure.
That's cool. That's awesome. Thanks, man. It's an honor to be on here. It's cool.
Dude, it's great. It's really great. It's great to have. I mean, I've met you in person. We've had conversations in the past, and I'm thankful that you're willing to spend the time, because the time is money for all of us. But I'm thankful that you're willing to spend the time and have these conversations and work through. We're just working through this stuff as we go, as far as ideas going, and this is where I get to play my specialty here. Whereas some of the everyone has a role to play. I can't go down that road, because we're just gonna have a 30-minute conversation on why I think that statement is a little controversial, even so. But with that being said, so people know where to find you: Snake Staff Systems and Flux Defense. Yeah. And then for those who are still listening, I had this up earlier at the beginning, but I guess I'll bring it back up again. We have a locals page. It's redactedculture.locals.com. That is the kind of the if you want to subscribe to support the page, that's where you can. We do it for $5 a month. The primary use of that is because if you want to support the show, so we stay away from a, what do you call it, an advertisement model, and we could just focus more on community involvement. This is the best way for us to do it right now. And we're thanking for those who have joined on. And then other than that, that's where for members only get kind of sneak peeks at things that are coming down the pipeline. And then also every time we start a new operation, that's one way to make sure you're on the mailing list. So that being the case, you've also got our merch over at redactedllc.com. For those who have started deciphering the code, there is something useful there for you. There's another step for you to find on that process. So good luck with that. But that's all the hints you're getting from me today. As we close out, this is the Redacted Culture Cast. This is the podcast where we talk about gun culture, the philosophy of violence, and generally host conversations throughout America and beyond about gun culture and beyond. We'll talk to you later, and we'll see you soon.